Yo, peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Broken Theory. Today we got a special guest, Unlearn the World. What's good?
Yes, sir. Chilling, sir. How you feeling? Everything good?
Yes, sir. Blessed and highly favored. You know the vibes.
Indeed. Likewise, the same. Thanks for having me.
So, man, let's talk about that project you dropped, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to say off rip, bro, you didn't need any features. But those features that you have, man.
Yes.
How did you get those?
Yeah. I like to say features are a lot easier to come by nowadays more than ever because of the internet, because of the music industry, the way things are. So it's not like an absurd feat. I think why people respond to the features so much on this album, The God That Sins, is really because of how cohesive they sound. Right?
Mm-hmm.
For an artist like myself, who many people may not know, but for those who do know, they really fuck with me. It's one of those things where, you don't expect the songs to sound as cohesive as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people are responding to. You know what I'm saying? Because anybody could get features. I see the ads all the time for features that everybody else has. People be buying them or whatever the case is. It's like, how do you curate an experience that makes it so that an unknown rapper for most people sounds just as good, if not better, than the people that they recognize?
Absolutely.
Right? That really comes down to the skill set of the artist. It comes down to their creative choices, all of those things. So, shout out to my folks, my man M80 in LA, a couple of other folks, Sean Price's wife Bernadette. Like, shout out to a lot of people who I know who after having been in the industry for years, who can kind of negotiate and get me what it is that I'm looking for. You know what I'm saying? So it was that really, the Ghostface here. I've done shows with Ghostface for years. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where you develop relationships with the people that you are a fan of, who are heroes for you. At least for me, I wanted to do songs with people who I admired the most.
Those are some big names, man.
And go out of my way to land, you know what I'm saying, to land those features. And you also have to have the budget. Like, it's not like, you know what I'm saying, like that's one thing or the other. It's business at the end of the day. And if you have the budget, the opportunity, and it makes sense at the time, then you do it. So for this album, that was one of the things that I wanted to emphasize. It's one of the things I wanted to make a statement about. Like, my rapping ability is at par with anybody who you admire. That was kind of the overall statement. But it's one thing to say it. I could get on every single podcast on earth and say that, and people will still look at me with the side eye, right? But then you listen to it, right? You got to listen to it and then be like, okay, I see what he on. I see, all right, I can hear him on a record with Sean Price, and it sounds organic and authentic to who this artist is. I can hear him on with Ghostface and the same thing. I can hear him with Benny and hear the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And we're working on the deluxe album now.
Wow.
We got more features.
Wow. Man, I want to just tell you, man, to be honest, the first time I met you was in Miami for Art Basel. Yes. And I didn't know who you were. I'm going to be honest with you. I was blown away by the Emcee ability, bro, because people don't do that no more. People don't control the crowd. People don't put their all into performance. Half of these people, they rapping over their actual song. They're not rapping over, an instrumental and stuff like that. I mean, how did you start to craft your performance in such a way that you knew it mattered so much?
Well, first and foremost, I care about the culture of hip hop, and I care about the craft of MC, right? Like, I'm not, I was saying it on another platform. You have rappers now where you don't, unless you're in their camp or in their neighborhood, you don't really know their come up story. Yeah. Right. I think that's the kind of the pervasive feel for most artists that are contemporary now. I don't know how a lot of these rappers started, because they show you when you finally meet them, they are already superstars. They already have the cars. They're already at the strip clubs. They're already rapping in front of sold out crowds. It's kind of just the rapper startup kit is given to them, and then they're off to the races for the music industry to chew them up and spit them out. I, on the other hand, came up in the golden era of hip hop. I grew up, like I was in high school in that time. You know what I'm saying? By the time like we get to DMX and Ruckus Records and all of that, I'm outside. So I've seen the evolution of what it is that we call MCs. I've seen some of the best perform. I've seen them freestyle. I've seen them do ciphers. I come from that. I come from battle rap. I come from doing ciphers. I'm based in the Bay Area, even though I'm from New York. And for like 6 years, almost 7 years, I hosted a hip hop cipher in San Francisco on Sundays with a live DJ, a band every single Sunday. Wow. So if anything honed my skills as an artist, it was that, right? It was called Return of the Cypher, ROTC. And it was a spot where all the rappers would come. Y'all would get 1 minute on stage to rap, freestyle, written, whatever it is that you want. The band would do a live version of a classic hip hop instrumental. DJ being there, cutting and scratching as needed. And it was a vibe. It was a really cool moment out here in the Bay Area for like what we call underground hip hop, but it really is just regular classic hip hop culture. You know what I mean? So like that, having those kind of experiences where you're always practicing, you're always working on your craft as a performer, that really honed me. Like it was really, you know what I'm saying? So more than anything else, it's putting that practice into action when you're on stage. So for me, it's like I actually appreciate the fact that nobody really knows me in certain areas where I perform. Yeah. Because when they finally experience it, they're watching something that they didn't even know they needed until they saw it. You feel me? So like that, I love that experience of it. I love coming off the stage and receiving the love and the compliments from people just being reminded of what real hip hop is. You know what I'm saying? And I hate having that conversation about like real versus this, but it's like, hip hop when you see it. You know what I'm saying? 100%. In the meanwhile, you'll accept whatever's there. Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. I think
that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
I seriously think that's where we're at in the culture now. People are just accepting what's there because it's there. Yeah. They want hip hop. They want music that's gonna stir the soul. But whatever's given to them is like, all right, well, this is the status quo. We're gonna go with this. They're not gonna go to country music, so they're gonna stick with what they know. Yeah. And every now and again, you're gonna have an artist pop out who's gonna remind you what it is to be a rapper and what it is to be part of a hip hop show. Right, what it is to like stop being too cool for school and put your hands up and do the call and response and do all of that stuff that they was doing back in the days. And for some people who aren't used to that, it feels quote unquote old school. Yeah. Oh, he doing that old school hip hop. No, it's not. It's actual hip hop shit. It's not just a bunch of fans with their phones in their hand pretending to be somebody they not. It's not an artist on stage pretending to be somebody they not, rapping over their own vocals and being their own hype man. This is somebody who actually like sat, crafted bars, put together some things, and then put together a song and an experience that makes you like, oh shit, he's saying some shit. You know what I mean? So like I take pride in my performance. I put it up against anybody, but then it's not even just a live performance. It's then you go and you find my music and it's the same energy. Yeah.
100%, man. I will say that the delivery is just like almost perfected. Like, you know what I mean? If that's a thing, perfection is an illusion to everybody. You know what I mean? It's subjective. But to me, it's looking like, you got it down packed, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I work on it, right? Like no different than any other artist. I rehearse. I do rehearsals. I work with DJs. I'm a producer also, so I know what it is to like sit and know like, okay, your timing on this record, or what I call emotional mapping, like saying something that has an emotion and you think about what it is that is causing that emotion for you. So if I'm angry in a record, or if I'm saying a bar that's supposed to be that's supposed to communicate a specific kind of emotion like anger or sadness, I have a memory in my brain where that word or that line is being said.
Gotcha. Right? And it kind of just activates it.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? But that's something that you got to be delicate with, because not every memory is a good memory.
Yeah, absolutely, so man. It could turn toxic
things.
real quick.
It could turn. I've seen artists have nervous breakdowns on stage because they wanted to share something that was extremely personal. The artist may not have been, the fans or the crowd may not have been ready for it, and you're trauma dumping. I don't like to trauma dump, but I like to use whatever it is that I've gone through personally. If I'm not specifically talking about it on stage or in the record, I'll still use that experience to draw up the emotion that is going to connect with the audience, so that the audience with me is having a very human experience, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like this is all, it's all with intention. So like I rehearse these kind of things. I practice. I care about the culture. So I care about giving fans their money's worth and giving them a good experience when they see me on stage.
100%. Can you share a little bit about your background? I know you said you started around high school. What year was that? And also, what was the situation like?
Shit, man. Like, I've been doing this like damn near more than 30 years, right? Like I'm in my 40s, started rapping when I was 10, right? You're trying to make sense of your life. I wasn't trying to be like a rap star back then. I was really just literally trying to make sense of my upbringing, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I grew up in New York, Washington Heights, right above Harlem. And it was really just kind of like a release. You know what I'm saying? My older brother rapped, we would play around, freestyle and all of that. Nas album comes out, like this golden era of music that I personally love comes out. And you're inspired by all of that, particularly Nas for me. The Illmatic album, I think like for every other artist like me, that was an album that changed us. You know what I'm saying? That's
I would say one of the most impactful albums of all time. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah, Billboard just named it the number one best rap album of all time. Billboard, for whatever it's worth, people be feeling a way about their list and other lists like that. But, it's one of those albums where you can't deny it. You can't deny its impact. You can't deny its credibility, its artistry, what it means to the culture. Absolutely. So that was the album that did it for me. Like, look, I got my rap name over it, right? The song that made me want to like start really taking rap seriously was The World Is Yours by Nas. So Unlearn the World is almost just kind of like a nod to that particular song.
Wow.
As a rap name. You feel me? So like it was all of that. It was the Biggies, it was the Jay-Z's, it was the Tupacs, it was even the Boot Camp Click and Sean Price and Ruck and Rock, and it was all the underground people that like literally raised me. And be in the studio with like the battle rappers that I knew from Breauxkin, people like Gene Gray, who's now even like retired. It's you know what I mean? It was like Ruckus Records. It was like anybody I saw outside spitting in New York City had a profound influence on me, because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then because you're in New York City, you're in close proximity to pretty much like it's the birthplace of hip hop. So you get not only like the underground, culturally based community of artists that you're working with or that you see all the time, but then you get your superstars, right? The people with the record deals, you see them in the car, you see them headed to the clubs or whatever the case is. So I grew up in all of this. So like it's important for me, as somebody who's no longer in New York, I'm based in the Bay Area now. I travel the world doing a lot of hip hop stuff, whether it's education work or other things. I carry that with me. And like that was what informed not only the way that I rap, what I rap about, how I approach the culture in and of itself. You know what I'm saying? Like all of the things that we learned, or a lot of people just learned for the first time during the 50th anniversary of hip hop. Like that's actually what I live and what I embody, right? So like it's a different approach for me or artists like me as opposed to some of the younger acts that are coming out who are really connected with the history. And I think that if any artist, young or old, actually connects with the history, you'll see how their performance and what they write about changes.
I agree. So when you first started off, what was the recording setup like? Were you going to somebody else's? Were you going to a studio? Did you buy your own? What was that like?
Yeah, like I talk about that often. Like there was a certain kind of tutelage. You had to know a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy, and you had to be nice in order to get in the studio. The first studio I ever walked into, I might have been 14 years old, and it was it was a friend of a friend, my man Noodles. He was
What year was this?
This is 93, 94.
Wow.
And he was not that much older than me. I think Noodles was 16. I was 14. He was the only kid that anybody knew who had a recording setup in his house.
Yeah.
He had the board. I think he had like a 24-track board. He had the microphone. He had the ADAT tapes because we wasn't recording digital. There wasn't Pro Tools back then, right? Like, so that was where I was, like, the first studio I had ever walked into. He was the first producer who I ever heard original beats from. And again, this is like 94, maybe closer to 95, where I'm experiencing this, and this is my first time walking in the studio. Wow. I didn't make a demo until like 2 years later, and the demo I did was like in the South Bronx with some other producers. But nonetheless, you know what I mean? Like it was me having to rap in the streets for somebody to know me and think of me as dope enough to go into the studio. Mm-hmm. And even then, it was about, all right, now you're in the studio, but like, how do we translate that talent that you have as a raw rap spitter, battle rapper, whatever the case is? How do we make that into being an artist? How do we make that into like crafting songs and being on a record that's going to be dope? And that took years. You know what I'm saying?
Was that like, something that you had got in your brain, like, from yourself, or was that something that, like, the people around you were kind of like putting in your head?
Yeah, I think it was both. I think it was a lot of, when you're young and you get so much props for the way you rap, it's a lot harder to kind of adjust to having people make you rap differently on records, because it's going to translate different. Right. Well, they used to tell me, stop yelling on the mic. I would always yell on the mic because I'm used to being on street corners, having to yell through
exactly to get talking. Your point across.
So you develop, just as a performer, you develop bad habits. You know what I'm saying? And then you have to be in a studio where you have to break those bad habits, or be around people who are honest enough with you to break those bad habits. This is where I transitioned into like being a producer as I got older, because I was listening to all of these mentors of mine who were telling me exactly what to do, how to like take out certain words in my line so I'm not stumbling over the beat, and how to quote unquote ride the beat. Like, these are things like I had to learn, and it wasn't the easiest task for me personally. Like, I could make cool records, but they weren't smash records. You know what I'm saying? And this as a young MC coming up in like the puffy, shiny suit era, people wasn't trying to hear the kind of rap that I was doing. And when they were finally ready for it, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was it was a different story. By the time people were ready for what it is that I was doing, then I was hitting the road. I was on tour with people like Dead Prez, Killer Mike, like You Can't Click. Like, these are the kind of artists that I was on tour with, and these are the kind of records that I was making. That really weren't what the music industry wanted or was trying to listen to, right? But it was like, at the time, I or the people with me didn't really understand the independent hustle in the way that I understand it today. So it's a completely different ballgame now that I'm much older, wiser, more talented, all the things. But that come up as, it was still a lesson learned. I learned a lot of lessons, and I learned a lot of techniques and connections and things about the music industry just as a kid. I interned at different record labels just to understand. Wow. Even now, like I'm an independent artist, and I'll probably remain independent for the rest of my career, maybe outside of a publishing deal or something like that. But I still talk to A&Rs now, where I'm just like, this doesn't make sense.
Why? Like, I'm good over here. Why would I do that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm cool over here. Like, if you want me to write a song for your artist, I'm down. You know what I'm saying? You got to check for me, cool. But in terms of my brand and my artistry, I think I'm better off doing it my way and trusting my gut, because that's what's gotten me to where I'm at now.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you something about, when you were saying that you were getting, advice from people that was around you. How did that make you feel at first when people started to kind of like tell you what to do in the studio?
I mean, there's naturally going to be some resistance, but then keep in mind, like, you are a teenager. At least for me, I was a teenager, right? Yeah. So, like, teenagers generally don't like to be told what to do. I don't even think this culture exists if teenagers don't like being told what to do, right? We are a rebellious culture. We are rebellious people because we recognize intrinsically that there's something off with society, and hip hop is our way of expressing it. So even in that medium, there's still going to be resistance. So for me, like being a 15-year-old, 16-year-old in the booth with older people trying to tell me what to do, there was always a back and forth. There was always, well, I don't want to do it that way. I don't think people are going to respect it if I do it that way, or if I, you know what I'm saying? Or just didn't feel comfortable for me to do it, to rap or to be on certain beats. It just didn't feel comfortable. So there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of arguments in many cases. You know, it's the resistance to having to adjust, or just kind of to be honest, it's kind of like the hurt you feel. Like, you know, you're as a kid, you're a little bit in your feelings when people are telling you you're not dope. Yeah. When they're not giving you that level of praise, right? You know what I'm saying? Or like they're not being yes men for you. They're just telling you, nah, do that again. Rewrite that. Nah, that line was iffy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just having to deal with criticism as a kid is not the most, you know what I'm saying? So like, what I learned as I got older is to accept it and to mold it into what it is that I would do to make the songs better, and that the people who were giving me these notes weren't giving me these notes out of hate. They were giving me these notes out of love. So it took a lot of maturity on my end. I had to grow into willing to listen to people. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, and I talk about it all the time to older artists. I say, I get why these younger kids don't want to listen to nobody, because they're recording the stuff in their house. And the shit's going viral. The shit's giving them motion off the rip in many cases, right? So why, in those particular cases, why would I want to listen to anybody? Why would I care, right? Because if I'm being successful doing it exactly the way that I've been doing it, then there's really not a reason for it. But then instilled, there are tried and true practices as an artist, as an MC, as a member of this culture that are going to be impactful. And if you're not aware of those things, you're just likely to just kind of get a little buzz now and then filter off when the trend changes, when the sound changes. You know what I'm saying? So like, what are the skills? I think about this often. What are the skills that you need as an MC to always have a career, right? And that's why I do the kind of brand of music that I do, because that's always going to be in style. Lyricism is always going to be in style. Good music is always going to be in style, as long as, you know what I'm saying? If you're not 100%. Following the trend, you're going to remain original and authentic to you. And there's going to be people who always respond to that.
And whether or not you have a budget right now, you know what I mean? What I always recommend to artists, especially if you don't have a marketing budget or anything like that, build your catalog. You can always take an old record and make it new to somebody that hasn't heard it before, and you know what I mean, didn't know that they were searching for that. And you're like, yo, I made that 5 years ago. And it's like, well, shit is new to me. You know what I mean? So it's like, some people listen to that Illmatic album, you know what I'm saying, today, and have never heard it. And it's like the most amazing thing that they've ever heard. You know, I can imagine. I mean, listening to that, you know, 30 years later.
Yeah, really. Exactly. It's one of those albums that can stand the test of time. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we do ourselves a disservice in hip hop culture by how short our quote unquote generations are, right? Every generation of rap only lasts like about 3 or 4 years, right? It's
but the rock and roll artists are touring still at 70. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, but even. But see, that used to be the talking point, right? Like, oh, we look at the Rolling Stones and people like the Beatles, and they're still touring. Our people are still touring. Busta Rhymes, I see on stage every night. Busta Rhymes is still touring. Rakim is still touring. Yep. Wu-Tang and Nas, they have residencies at, like, in Vegas. Like, so the OGs are still active and they're still touring. The problem is that there isn't like a comparison, and maybe there shouldn't be. There's a lot of push recently I've been seeing for there to be an adult rap category, right? People like Nas shouldn't be competing in the same Grammy category as an Ice Spice. That's crazy. Stop it. You pay attention to it when you look at it. Like, why are our great legacy acts having to compete for market share for these younger artists who the sound don't even sound the same?
They should have their own
so
genre.
I see a lot of push for that. I see a lot of push for considering some of these things as, oh, this is melodic rap, this is this, and then this is adult contemporary hip hop. I appreciate the fact that it's all still considered hip hop, And I appreciate the fact that our OGs are still able to tour. But with that said, it's not like the younger people are taking lessons or cues from the OGs. It's like, oh, they're over there. We're not paying attention to them. And there's never an emphasis within hip hop for there to be this intergenerational kind of coordination and love. And even though we appreciate it when we see it, when it happens, we kind of appreciate it. But in most cases, it's like the old heads is over here and we're over here at the kiddie table. And it's like, well, nah, let's if we're going to really make this a force to reckon with, and we're not going to do these subdivided different categories, then let's really come together and give guidance to the younger generation, if not by sound, then definitely by knowledge of the game, and so that they're not exploited, and action and all of those things. So it's just, you know, I appreciate the fact that like every rapper nowadays has a lane, right? I just wish that there was a little bit more communication and collaboration. It's there, but I think there could be more.
No, I definitely dig that, man. You spoke about certain things that as an MC you need to do and stay up on. Can you drop like maybe 5 of those things that, you know, you always try to stay on, or a habit, you know, whether that be you going into the studio every day or you writing something every day? What are some of the habits that you have that help you?
Oh yeah. Well, I do write every day. I do write a bar or two. Some thoughts will come to mind. So I do definitely write every day. Keep your pen sharp. Really learn who you are. I think more than anything else, your pathway towards artistry is the same pathway for your personal growth. The more you grow as a human being, the more comfortable and honest you are with yourself, the easier it will be to write. It will be easier to be inspired and to create, because you're creating from a very authentic place, right? It's harder for a lot of artists to create or recreate their hit song if it was a fluke, if they don't know themselves. If they were just trying to do something for external validation, then as soon as that circumstance or that moment goes away, they're just left with themselves. And if you're not grounded in who you are as a person, let alone an artist, as a person, then I can see it being difficult for you to navigate through the music industry when you're no longer hot. So one of my first recommendations would always be really just get to know yourself and to really be honest with yourself. That's like the key. Keep your pen sharp. You know, take care of your mental and physical health, man. We just lost Chino Excel. We lost DJ Polo. We're losing rappers before they even get to 55 or 60. You know what I'm saying? For a lot of different reasons. Jail, murders, you know, heart disease, all the different things. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I think we have a crisis right now in hip-hop in terms of health and wellness. And I think that that's something that if you see some of the older acts that are doing the touring that I'm talking about, when you see the Locks, when you see people like Method Man and Wu-Tang, like they take care of themselves. They're in their 50s or they're in their late 40s and they take really good care of themselves. You know what I'm saying? But that has to, it's something that we saw after rappers got money and started doing their things. It's like, y'all need to start doing that now. You broke, be outside and hit the park for the gym or whatever the case is. Watch what you're eating. Like, these are, you know, so we should be having those kind of conversations, right? Just taking care of your mental and physical health, being honest with yourself, keeping your pen sharp, you know, always pushing the boundaries of your own creativity, find a way to stay inspired. Like, these are all the things that, like, for me, help me. Like, I'm always inspired. I can always write because I always know how to draw up my own inspiration. You know what I'm saying? But I'm always in the dojo, so to speak. I'm always rapping, listening to beats, working on things. I teach kids, right? Like, I have a hip hop nonprofit, so I'm always getting inspiration from the young kids coming up, whether they're producers, rappers, or whatever the case is, coaching them. Like, you know, so you draw inspiration from all of that. I think that's key. It's taking care of yourself and staying inspired.
100%. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Oh man, you know, I don't think I've faced any challenges that are any different than any other artist facing challenges. It's like, you know, trying to get signed, right? Or what does getting signed mean, right? Like, for me, it was for a lot of people, getting a record deal is like the answer to their prayers until they realize that they're in a nightmare, right? Because you wanted this deal so bad, you didn't look at it, you didn't read it, you didn't have a lawyer read it, and now you're in a 360 deal, or you're in some predatory deal that basically you've signed your rights away to your own music, your own likeness, your own intellectual property. That's what we're seeing a lot. It's because artists want the look. And the music industry is really, really great and adept at selling you the look versus the money. Right? I just finished watching this Backstreet Boys documentary, how it was touring all over the world, Europe, the United States. They had their #1 records here and there, and they was only getting checks for like $10,000 after a year worth of work or more. Those are the kind of situations you hear artists in our culture deal with. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Getting screwed over by this record label or this manager or this, that, and the third. It's like, when your emotional needs surpass your business acumen, this is what they use to exploit you, right? They're pulling kids out of poverty. They're pulling kids out of really hard circumstances who don't even have the wherewithal to read a contract. They probably can't even read a lot of the time. Let's be honest.
For real, they all dropped out of school and stuff,
So let's really have a conversation exactly about the people who are getting signed. They're kids who are talented as hell, who are in really desperate situations, and because of those desperate situations, are very prone to getting exploited. And as long as you're continuing to be sold the look versus what the business is, we're going to keep falling for the trap. I mean, even if you're not a rapper, we fall for the trap. We're on social media all the time. Yeah. We're literally creating content and intellectual property to post on a website or a platform that does not pay us what we should be owed. Right? Yep. So these are things that we just have to think about as a culture. If we're shifting and moving culture, if all eyes are on us, our slang, our trends, our fashion, our music, then there needs to be some level of coordination, organization, ownership, all of these different things. As to why there's nobody at the helm kind of helping to bridge these gaps is beyond me. But I think that we're slowly learning this after being exploited for as long as we have been. And that tide is starting to shift. People are going to be a little bit more business oriented when they talk and when they look at these deals and all of this stuff, and they're going to ask for more because they're asking from a more educated standpoint. And as long as we stay educated, then we're in a better space. But if there's always somebody who's willing to sell themselves short, then that's where we get into the problem. You can't stand on business if you got people who are willing to just say, fuck all that, write me a check and I'll tap dance. And
I don't care if it's for 20 grand, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
All on clothes.
We seeing it now. We seeing people get bags from the Republican Party to support Trump. It's, you know what I mean? Even though his policies or Republican policies are anti-black, it's a weird conundrum to be in. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like people are just not educated in that, and you can't expect everybody to be woke or intellectual, but at least be aware, right? Like hip hop is a culture that's supposed to be of awareness and us knowing what's going on. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that there's so much ignorance in our culture is something that we need to address.
Absolutely, 100%, man. I just want to ask you, man, before we get out of here, what's some advice that you would give to your younger self, if you can give yourself a piece of advice when you first started?
Yeah, I think I give my younger self advice every time I do a record. I'm always doing what they call inner child work. I'm giving my advice to my younger self almost every day, because I think that the younger me would be very proud of where I am today. So if I had anything to give to my younger me, it would be like, yo, it gets better. It gets so much better. Nothing specific though, because I think for me, I'm in a very blessed position of the things that I wanted as a kid are the things that I'm doing now. So I usually just kind of reflect on if the 15-year-old version of me saw me now, they'd be super surprised and super happy.
Wow.
And that gives me the motivation to keep going, but it also gives me the motivation to dream of other things that are bigger and larger. You know what I'm saying? I think all of us as artists in one way or another are chasing childhood dreams.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like these are dreams that we developed as a kid, but then you get older and, you know, God willing, you achieve those dreams or you hit certain benchmarks and milestones in your life. So now what? You know what I'm saying? I've done features and songs with all of my favorite artists. I've done shows with my favorite artists. Some of my favorite artists are in my phone. I can talk to them. Like, you know what I mean? So now what do I do?
What would you say?
So that's when you...
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
No, I was just going to say that, so now I have the opportunity to dream bigger and think larger, right?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about what the 15-year-old version of me wants, I'm thinking about what the 42-year-old version of me wants. And that's a
beautiful thing, man. That's a beautiful thing. What would you say is your highest milestone for you personally? I'm not talking about like, you know, numbers or anything like that. I'm just saying for you personally in your career, what is one of the things that you got like so excited about?
Touring with Jizza in the UK.
Wow.
That was, you know what I'm saying?
Amazing.
People had been telling me for years that I need to go to Europe, that people would really appreciate my brand of hip hop in Europe. To be able to do that with a member of Wu-Tang, which is one of the dopest groups ever, and to see what the response is to this person, right? To see the response to Jizza now, let alone the 90s, right? Like now they still love him. For me to be able to be on that stage and warm and open up for him and share the stage with him was eye-opening. It was inspirational. Like those crowds were our crowds. Like I would, you know, we're rocking sold out shows for like a whole week of tour, 1,000 cap venues. That was what it is that I've always kind of envisioned in my head for myself. So to have that opportunity in another country, and for them to be singing my words back to me, and for me to be able to create this environment and this experience in terms of my performance where everybody's connected, that was major. You know what I'm saying? I never felt famous as a rapper until I went to the UK. Not to say that fame was the goal, but I think it's more validation, being seen and being appreciated for what you offer, and that's what the UK gave me. So like that would be the milestone right now. And there's more milestones to come. I just think that one off the top of my head is the one.
Yeah, I had an opportunity come from Dan over at Clockwork, man. Shout out to Dan.
Shout out Dan. That's my guy.
Dan is that dude. He gave me the opportunity to perform for Jizza in my hometown, Orlando, man. It was a beautiful thing. It was the biggest crowd I've ever done. It was for Wu-Tang, bro. I got Wu-Tang tatted on me, bro. Wu-Tang is for the culture. You know what I mean?
You know what
so it was just like a legendary moment for me, man. I'm forever grateful. Before we close out, man, I know you say you're working on the deluxe. Anything coming soon? Other than that?
Yeah, I think in the next couple of weeks we got a record. I have a record with Ab-Soul that we're about to get ready to drop. I know
that's crazy lyrical. I know that's crazy.
Yeah, we get busy. So I got a record with Papoose that I'm getting ready to drop. I have 8 new songs on the project that I'm adding. We're just gonna do a lot more visuals, so you're gonna be able to see, you know what I'm saying, what the fuss is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm excited to be sharing it with everybody.
I'm here for it, man. Well, I appreciate you coming to this podcast, man, giving your blessing. More success to you in the future, my brother, and I'll be continue watching. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Much appreciated. Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. Appreciate y'all. Shout out. This hip hop in general, man.
Finesse, baby.